Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Kyle's Lists. This is the first ever video on this new channel, and I'm super excited about it. I started this channel because I'm always watching lists on YouTube, and I figure I'd start a channel with my own list because I have a bunch of really good ideas. To start it off, we're going to do a list that I've compiled in the past, but I'm putting it in video form, of my 100 favorite movies of all time. Now, we're not going to go through all 100 today because that would be silly and would take forever, so we're going to break this up into 10 series of 10s. So, for example, today we'll be going with numbers 100 through 91, and then in subsequent videos we will go down the list all the way till we get to that final set of 10. Really excited about it. I love movies. They've been a passion of mine since I was a little kid. I've written the movie, I've made some shorts, just some really fun things that I love to do. I love watching them, I love studying them, just really overall, really love them. So let's get started. Number 100 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. It is a movie that came out in 2014 alongside Guardians of the Galaxy that really breathed fresh new air into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm a huge Marvel fan. I've seen every movie multiple times. I've watched every TV show, and I really, really love it. But there is a problem in that it's a little formulaic at times and a little familiar. Captain America: The Winter Soldier was one of the first movies that I really thought broke that mold. And it's directed by Joe and Anthony Russo, who somehow went from directing Community and Arrested Development to directing Marvel blockbusters and being really good at it. But Winter Soldier is more of a spy espionage thriller than it is a superhero movie, which I've always found to be really, really cool. It's got great fight choreography. The highway action set piece is really great. Obviously, the standout elevator fight is great. And it's just a really, really well shot movie. Chris Evans is in top form. You can tell he's much more confident now that he's played Captain America a couple of times. Scarlett Johansson, Samuel L. Jackson are great. But the real heart of the movie is the relationship between the Winter Soldier and Captain America, which is obviously incredibly complex. The story moves along at a brisk pace. Again, the action is great. It's really, really well directed. It's got a very underrated score from a composer that's often overlooked in Henry Jackman, and it is overall just a really interesting kind of new type of movie that Marvel was making. At number 99, Shrek. Now, I went back and forth between whether or not to include Shrek 2 or Shrek, because I think Shrek 2 might be a slightly better movie. But there's something about the fact that Shrek is the original that kind of puts it above Shrek 2 on my list. It's just hilarious. It's a kid's movie that, even when you watch as an adult, you pick up on some of the adult jokes that are put in there, and it's really, really funny to sort of watch it now. It's got great one-liners. It's a parody film, but it's also not a parody film that I don't like, where it just dogs on the genre. It also embraces the fact that it's a parody, but it's also a fairy tale, so it has kind of a love letter to fairy tales as well. Just you can list off so many fairy tale characters' names that are just dropped in and cameos that are really fun. Lord Farquaad is a great comedy villain, and the magic mirror scene with like the Bachelorette style contestants of princesses is still funny to this day. Obviously, the biggest standout of Shrek is Eddie Murphy's donkey. I mean, the "making waffles" quote is just something that gets brought up, 20 years later since the movie's been out. And just overall, Shrek's like a really good kids movie that even still gets funnier watching it as an adult. At number 98, we have End of Watch. End of Watch is a film starring Michael Pena and Jake Gyllenhaal about two police officers who run afoul with a drug cartel during their normal beats. It's directed by David Ayer, and it's got like that camcorder kind of found footage style to it, which might turn a lot of people off, but I actually think it works really well with this movie, especially in the action set pieces, similar to like the ending of The Blair Witch Project, where the found footage style really elevates the horror and tension of what's going on in the climax of that movie. The action set pieces in this movie feel really claustrophobic, feel really chaotic because you don't know what's going on. You can't tell where the bullets are spraying from and all of that. and it's really effective in its way. This movie is sad, it's funny, it's heartfelt, it's very, very violent, and it's just a movie that's a really great depiction of partners and brothers that I really, really appreciate. Overall, just a really, really great movie. Number 97, we have Sky High. You're probably thinking to yourself, this man has 2 kids' movies in his first 4. How can I take him seriously? Look, I love movies. I love complex movies. I love movies that make me think. But at the end of the day, I also love movies that I enjoy. And Sky High is one of those movies. It's a great kids' movie. It's got a fantastic message about dealing with expectations, about being yourself, and about what truly makes a hero that I think is actually beneficial to kids to this day. And it's also got just a really interesting cast of people who went on to do a variety of different things. The Save the Citizen scene, if you've seen the movie and you know what I'm talking about, is really, really cool. Still holds up to this day. And it's got Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I think is one of the most underrated actresses working in Hollywood today. On to number 96, which is The Woman in Black, Harry Potter and a Haunted House. Sign me up, baby. This was one of the first movies that Daniel Radcliffe did post Harry Potter. It's a PG-13 kind of haunted house story written by frequent Matthew Vaughn collaborator Jane Goldman, who's an excellent writer in her own right. The movie itself is really, really tightly paced. It's only an hour and 30 minutes. I'm a real sucker for like haunted house ghost stories, and this movie might be one of my favorites, and that falls in that category. It has some jump scares, but it doesn't overtly rely on it. It uses wonderful camera work and atmosphere and the set design to really add to the kind of tension and the horror that comes with it. It does a great job of only showing you glimpses of the titular woman in black prior to kind of the big climax of the movie. It does sort of fall into a little bit of the cliches of haunted house movies, but it also doesn't overtly rely on those cliches to be scary. It's genuinely thrilling and genuinely heartfelt at a couple of moments, and it has one of my favorite endings ever in a ghost story. Also, the score by Marco Beltrami is really, really good. He has this really creepy kind of background music that adds to the tension, and then in the more kind of dramatic moments, he like holds back and it really kind of adds to it. It's also got maybe the creepiest opening scene I've ever seen in a PG-13 movie, but that's just me. At number 95, we have The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Another kids movie, but this one's very, very good. The kids in it they're good. They're not great like the actors you see in It and Stranger Things to this day, because child actors have just gotten so talented. But they're good. They don't detract from the film. They're not bad. They're very acceptable. But the true magic of this film is the world of Narnia itself, similar to Middle-earth that finished right before it. It just has so many diverse landscapes, from the wintry snow lamppost to Cair Paravel. You feel the magic of Narnia kind of come off the screen. The older actors, Liam Neeson gives a great voice performance. A young, inexperienced James McAvoy gives a very charming performance as the Fawn. But the biggest standout, obviously, is Tilda Swinton as the Witch. She is one of the most talented character actresses working to this day, and always just dives straight into her roles, and this film is no exception. It's got a brilliant score from Harry Gregson Williams, it's one of my favorite scores of all time, and it's got one of the greatest PG battle sequences to ever grace the screen. It's a good adaptation of a novel that, frankly, is kind of hard to adapt. Number 94, we have Game Night. This movie is one of the few movies that so surpassed my expectations. I went to see the movie for really 2 reasons only, and it was Rachel McAdams and Jason Bateman, and I was blown away. Mark Perez's script is witty, subversive, self-aware. The actors are obviously great. Bateman and McAdams are great, but the biggest standout is easily Jesse Plemons, who plays their neighbor Gary. He steals every scene that he's in. He's so good. Really interesting camera trick where it makes like some of the cars driving look like miniatures and like game pieces, which is really, really neat. You get a Dexter cameo and Michael C. Hall, and the movie's kind of just like self-aware as to how outlandish the situations get, and I really appreciate that about it. So Game Night is very, very good and very underrated. Number 93, we have Mean Girls. Mean Girls is easily the movie outside of my top 10 that I quote most often. It's hilarious. The cast is stellar. Tina Fey's adaptation is great. It's genuinely hilarious. Rachel McAdams, Lindsay Lohan, Lacey Chabert, and Amanda Seyfried are great. Amanda Seyfried really stands out to me. Not typically a fan of stupid characters being really funny, but the way that she delivers the lines and interacts with the cast around her really kind of has her like stupid character stand out in a really charming way. Not to mention her lines as somebody who's stupid are just funnier than most other stupid characters' lines. I could easily just quote, so many different things, but I would do that in a separate video. The rule about wearing pink on Wednesdays is something I actually followed for a couple weeks in college and was really fun to do. But overall, the movie is just hilarious. It explores interesting themes, dealing with identity, dealing with bullying, dealing with accepting who you are, accepting people who are different than you, and overall, just like a really good teen movie that's really, really funny. I love it, and Jingle Bell Rock is still a really hilarious scene. Amy Poehler's great. Just overall, really, really good movie. At number 92, we have Rain Man. Rain Man is the first of many movies to follow that actually came out from before I was born. It stars Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman and is kind of like a road trip adventure story between two long-lost brothers. Dustin Hoffman plays the titular Rain Man, and him and Tom Cruise's dynamic is really good. I was especially surprised by Tom Cruise in this movie. Typically, Tom Cruise is playing, a outlandish comedic character like in Tropic Thunder, or the action star in Jack Reacher, Mission Impossible, and pretty much any other movie that Tom Cruise is in. But this movie, he actually delivers a really layered performance, and he actually flexes his acting chops. And he just has a really interesting character arc from this beginning kind of cocky person who really only cares about himself to experiencing life kind of through his brother's eyes. It's really a story about brothers and kind of learning to look at life in a different way and learning to experience life through someone else's eyes, which I really, really love. It's not your typical 80s, 90s movie. It's much, much more than that, and it's very, very heartfelt as well. And rounding off our list at number 91, we have Bad Times at the El Royale. This 2018 thriller was directed and written by Drew Goddard, who I have been a fan of since his work on Lost. Overall, that movie is just severely underrated. I remember going to it on its opening night and being like one of 10 people in the theater. It just didn't get a ton of marketing. It wasn't a huge major blockbuster, so it just didn't do well at the box office. But the movie, to me, is really underlooked. There's two main complaints about it. Number one is that it's really long, and there are certain scenes that drag, but overall, I've read the script and I've watched it multiple times, and I actually think that it's really, really well paced. I will say there's like one or two scenes that does drag, though. And then the second complaint is that's like a Tarantino wannabe. Number one, Tarantino doesn't own a particular style of filmmaking, and while Bad Times at the El Royale does kind of have some of his usual quirky characters, really funny, witty dialogue, really random acts of graphic violence. It has all that stuff, but it also like celebrates it. Like, this is obviously someone who's a fan of Tarantino and wanted to make a movie similar to him. I don't see where that can be a complaint. Also, my biggest thing about this movie is the way that the set design and production design of the motel kind of magically dances with the camera work. That really makes the atmosphere so cool. This movie has really underrated camera work. It's a movie that made me want to invest in cinematography and start filming things myself. The acting's great. Jeff Bridges, old reliable's good. Dakota Johnson's good. John Hamm basically plays a douchier Don Draper, so if you're a fan of Don Draper, a Mad Men fan, watch the movie because he's pretty much Don Draper 2.0. But the real standout to me was Cynthia Erivo, someone who I didn't know a whole lot about going into the movie, but came out like, dang, that girl's really, really good, and I'm going to go watch something that she's in. in the future just because of how much I enjoyed her performance. The movie itself, again, I cannot state is criminally underrated. Michael Giacchino has a solid score that really adds to it. And it's a movie that every time you think you know what's going on, it kind of subverts your expectations in a way that actually works. And yeah, that's our list for today. Look next week for the next list, which will feature number 90 through 81. And share the video with your friends if you know someone you think would enjoy it. Knock yourselves out. One free piece of advice before we go. In this COVID time, it can be very isolating and very lonely. So if you have someone that you care about in your life, let them know. It may just be what they need to hear. See you guys next time.